The wedding hall glittered with crystal chandeliers and golden drapes, but Ethan Knight felt nothing but fury boiling beneath his tailored suit. The CEO of Knight Enterprises, a man feared in boardrooms across the city, was now standing at the altar like a trapped animal. This marriage was never his choice. It was his grandmother's dying wish, written into her will: marry the daughter of her old friend, or the inheritance, the empire he had built on her foundation, would slip through his fingers. Ethan had agreed out of cold calculation, not love. He told himself he could endure it. But when the church doors opened and his bride walked in, his chest tightened. The girl's face was hidden beneath a heavy veil, thicker than fashion demanded. Her gown was modest, almost old-fashioned, lacking the glamour expected of a billionaire's bride. She moved slowly, nervously, as if carrying the weight of the world with each step. Gasps rippled through the guests, followed by whispers. Is that really her? They say she's plain, maybe worse. No wonder she hides her face. Ethan's jaw locked. Ugly bride. They tricked me. His pride bristled at the idea of becoming the subject of gossip. The thought of his rival smirking in the shadows, whispering about the CEO shackled to a nobody, made his blood boil. The ceremony proceeded in silence. When it was time for the vows, Ethan's voice was clipped, almost harsh, while hers trembled softly like the flutter of fragile wings. She did not look up, not once. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan barely brushed her hand. His grip was cold, mechanical. Cameras flashed, immortalizing a moment that felt more like a corporate contract than a union of hearts. Inside, his thoughts were venomous. This is a humiliation, a calculated trap. They want to bind me to a faceless woman, a burden to my name. But then, as the guests clapped politely, Ethan caught something, a flicker in the way she stood, her back straightening under the weight of all those judging eyes. There was no begging in her silence, no desperation to prove herself. Only quiet endurance, as though she had learned long ago to withstand storms without complaint. It unsettled him. For just a second, he wondered what her eyes looked like beneath that veil. But the thought vanished as quickly as it came. The Knight mansion was a palace of marble and steel, but to Lily, it felt more like a gilded prison. Her new home was grand, yet sterile, echoing with the absence of warmth. The halls were silent except for the faint hum of staff moving silently between rooms. Her own wing, elegantly decorated, felt like a showcase rather than a home. Ethan hardly acknowledged her presence. Mornings were a blur of meetings and phone calls. Evenings were spent alone in his study, lit only by the cold glow of his laptop screen. At dinner, she dined quietly in her private dining room, invisible to a husband who refused to even glance in her direction. Yet, despite his deliberate neglect, Lily observed him carefully. She noticed the slight tremor in his hands when he was frustrated, the way his jaw tightened when a meeting went poorly, the rare moments when his sharp gaze softened unknowingly. She learned the rhythm of his life, a silent witness to a man who seemed untouchable. And she didn't just watch, she acted with quiet kindness. One evening, after a particularly harsh confrontation at work left Ethan nursing a bandaged hand, she approached him with a tray. "You'll need this," she said softly, offering antiseptic and neatly folded cloths. Ethan barely looked at her, but her gentle persistence unsettled him. "Don't think kindness will change anything," he snapped, voice colder than the autumn night. Her eyes shimmered with quiet pain, but she bowed her head without complaint. "I only wish to make your life easier," she murmured. There was no accusation, no bitterness, only unwavering calm. At night, he sometimes heard her humming in the garden, a soft, haunting melody that seemed to seep through the mansion walls. It was impossible not to notice, and it stirred something in him that he hadn't felt in years: curiosity, perhaps even admiration. But he fought it, blaming his imagination. Staff whispered among themselves about the mysterious Mrs. Knight. "She never shows her face," one maid commented. "And yet she moves with such poise, like a shadow in the sun." Lily's silence was her armor. She didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't attempt to win affection by force. She existed in his life as a quiet constant, a challenge he hadn't anticipated. For Ethan, the cold, calculated marriage was meant to be a punishment, an obligation he would endure until he could maneuver out of it. But with every act of quiet compassion, every song floating through the night air, every silent gesture that contradicted his assumptions, the lines he drew around his heart began to blur. He refused to admit it, even to himself, but Lily's presence was starting to matter. Her patience, her dignity, her strength, all of it chipped away at the fortress of arrogance he had built around himself. And though he wouldn't yet acknowledge it, the seeds of change had already been planted. The charity gala was the kind of event Ethan usually dominated with power and prestige. The grand ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers, golden drapes, and the chatter of the city's elite. Tonight, he had planned to make a brief appearance and then escape back to the safety of his office. But his grandmother's friends had insisted, and he had no choice but to bring Lily. She walked beside him, head held high, veil drawn over her face. The murmurs started the moment they entered. The night bride, she's plain, isn't she? Is she hiding something? Ethan felt a surge of irritation, his jaw tightening. His pride bristled at the thought of all these influential eyes scrutinizing him, waiting for him to fail. I can't let them see this. But Lily moved with quiet dignity, her posture straight, hands clasped gracefully. She didn't flinch under the whispers or the sidelong glances. Somehow, her calm presence made the crowd's murmurs feel insignificant, and for the first time, Ethan felt a pang of unease he couldn't ignore. The evening passed with small talk, speeches, and award presentations. But when Ethan noticed the way his peers subtly laughed behind their hands, as if sharing a private joke at his expense, a surge of anger boiled within him. Without thinking, he seized Lily's hand and led her to the center of the room, where all eyes immediately turned. Enough, he said, voice sharp and commanding. If you want to see my wife, then see her. A tense silence fell over the room. The crowd stiffened, the whispers dying mid-sentence. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened, not out of fear, but out of a strange, sudden protectiveness. And then he lifted the veil. Gasps echoed. Cameras flashed. The murmurs of doubt transformed into astonishment and admiration. Lily's face was breathtaking, her delicate features framed by dark waves of hair, her eyes radiant yet calm, commanding yet soft. Her lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. She exuded elegance, intelligence, and an almost magnetic poise. Every assumption Ethan had made shattered in an instant. But it wasn't just her beauty that stunned him. It was the quiet strength in her gaze, the dignity that refused to bend to his anger, the grace that had carried her through weeks of cold silence, the subtle courage that had faced society's judgment without complaint. Ethan felt a strange warmth rise in his chest, mixed with guilt, awe, and admiration. How could he have thought her plain? How could he have treated someone so extraordinary as if she were invisible? The night after the gala, Ethan couldn't sleep. His mind was restless, replaying every detail of the evening, every gasp from the crowd, every flash of cameras, but most of all, Lily's face. Her unveiled beauty, her quiet strength, and the way she had carried herself with dignity haunted him. He wandered the mansion halls, his footsteps echoing in the marble corridors, until he found himself in the garden. Moonlight shimmered on the fountain, casting silver reflections across the flowers. And there she was, Lily, standing alone, her hair loose now, cascading like waves of silk over her shoulders. You're awake, she said softly, without turning. I can't stop thinking, he admitted, voice rough and unsteady. I was wrong, about everything. She turned to him, eyes calm yet piercing. About me, she asked, a small, curious smile on her lips. About how I treated you, he confessed. I judged you before seeing you. I doubted you, dismissed you, I was cruel. His hands shook slightly as he reached toward her, unsure if she would step back. Lily studied him for a long moment, then approached. You've realized that my silence wasn't weakness, she said quietly. It was patience, my strength. As quiet, not loud. And I never needed your approval, I only needed honesty and respect. I want to give that to you, he said, finally dropping the walls he had spent his life building. Not because of society, not because of my inheritance, but because you deserve it. Because you're extraordinary. Her eyes softened, shimmering with a mixture of relief and something deeper, something fragile yet inviting. Slowly, she reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, comfortably, as if they had always belonged together. From that night onward, the night mansion began to change. The halls that had been cold and silent filled with laughter, conversations, and shared moments. Ethan introduced her proudly at board meetings and society gatherings, never again hiding her from the world. The staff whispered with admiration, noting the once distant CEO now softened, attentive, even tender. Ethan learned to listen, to appreciate, to share, and Lily taught him the quiet power of patience and dignity. What had started as a marriage bound by obligation transformed into a partnership built on mutual respect, admiration, and slowly, love. Even the world outside noticed the change. The whispers that once mocked them now praised the union as one of strength and grace. And though Ethan had once feared humiliation, he realized the truth. The greatest gift wasn't the inheritance, the power, or the reputation. It was Lily, the woman he had underestimated, the one who had quietly unraveled his heart, and ultimately, completed him. In the end, what had seemed like a trap, a cruel twist of fate, had become the turning point of his life. Ethan had entered the marriage expecting disappointment, but he found love, humility, and a partner who challenged him in ways no business deal ever could. And as they stood together in the moonlit garden, hand in hand, Ethan finally understood. The veil had been lifted, but it was more than her beauty he saw, it was the extraordinary woman she had always been.